I've lived in Atlanta for over 15 years, and I promise you, if you can't handle these 4 things, you do not want to move here. I'm going to share exactly what those things are with you right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to Living in Atlanta. My name is Mark Brenner. I'm a local realtor, and today I'm going to share with you 4 things that you absolutely have to know about before you make your decision to move to Atlanta, Georgia. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love living here. I have a whole YouTube channel, Living in Atlanta. So obviously, I think it's a fantastic place to live for your family, for your career, for a whole lot of reasons. But today we're going to pressure test your move. Maybe you have to choose between a city to relocate for work. Maybe you're looking for a more affordable city. Whatever the reason you're considering Atlanta, this video is going to help you really pressure test that decision and make sure you have all the information. Make sure you know some of the worst or most challenging things about living in this area. And today I'm actually going to cover some of the less known, less talked about items, right? There's lots of videos like this. You've probably talked to people who live here. They talk to you about the humidity. They talk to you about the mosquitoes and the cockroaches. Today I'm going to talk about some stuff that they probably didn't tell you about. We're going to go a little bit deeper into what it's really like to live here and what some of the biggest challenges are. So let's get right into it. 4 things you must be able to handle before making the move to Atlanta, Georgia. All right, number 4 is more of a typical thing that you've heard about Atlanta, but I do need to cover it because it's affected me personally, and it's allergies, okay? Allergies, especially for people who are sensitive to pollen, is really a big challenge of living in the Atlanta, Georgia area. We have a ton of green spaces, a ton of trees, and that means we have a lot of allergens. In fact, if you're living here in the springtime, one day you're going to open your door and notice that your car, all the cars, are completely covered in a layer of yellow pollen. Okay, and this happens during the springtime as everything is pollinating. It absolutely covers the cars. You're going to have to get your car washed. But we have literally set records in Atlanta for pollen count and allergens in general. This is a really tough place if you're sensitive to that kind of thing. And the truth is, even if you're not, you may develop allergies. I was never super sensitive to allergies. I literally have a form of low-grade asthma after living here for 15 years, and all signs point to that being the issue. All right, I have a literal prescription inhaler. I get wheezing sometimes, get that chest congestion. I'm not a smoker. It's from pollen and ragweed and mold allergies that happen all throughout the year. And this is a real challenge of living here. So taking Claritin every day is a very common thing down here, having air purifiers, whatever you need to do, but this is something that you should really know before you make your final decision. If you're the type of person who is extremely sensitive to all kinds of allergens, pollen, ragweed, dust, mold, this could present some real challenges for you. So this is probably one you've heard about already, but I had to include it because it actually has affected me in a real way. So definitely make sure you're aware of the crazy allergies down here. All right, so allergies is a common one you hear about living in Atlanta. The next are going to be ones that you probably haven't heard many people talk about. At number 3, I have not a great food scene / lots of corporate chains, okay? Now listen, don't get me wrong. There is great fine dining available in Atlanta. You want to go out on a date night, fancy restaurant, you can definitely get some great food here. You can also get incredible cheap eats, particularly Buford Highway. You hear me talk about it all the time. Incredible ethnic food, largely from Latin America and Asian cultures, affordable, authentic. My favorite eating experience in Atlanta is on Buford Highway and Duluth. But it's that middle ground that you really don't find here. Okay, there are a lot of corporate change, especially when it comes to food in Atlanta. If you think of a city like Portland, which really fosters mom and pop independently owned businesses in food and retail, Atlanta, for whatever reason, really is not that way. We have a ton of corporate chains down here, and in terms of middle of the road good value and a food scene, it's kind of lacking. There's a lot of overpriced places or a lot of places with poor service or low quality. Now, I'm pretty critical when it comes to this. Other people feel like Atlanta has an amazing food scene. And now we are getting the Michelin Guide coming to Atlanta. They're currently doing their first reviews, so we may have some Michelin star restaurants in Atlanta soon, and you would think that would have an impact on other high profile chefs coming to Atlanta to earn that Michelin star. But I do have to say, one of my least favorite things living here that I would have wanted to know before making this decision is that it's not a knockout food city. There's a lot of corporate chains, okay? It's not a Chicago or a Portland or a New Orleans even. New Orleans has a local, incredible food scene that doesn't break the bank and a lot of locally owned businesses. I would not put Atlanta in the top 10 in terms of food scenes. I just wouldn't. Okay, I love this city. I know that's a little harsh, but I'm really trying to give you the truth. Now, again, you can get great food down here. Buford Highway is amazing. Duluth is amazing. There's plenty of high-end restaurant experiences that could compete with many major cities. But in terms of like high density, good value, middle of the road, feel like you're really getting your bang for the buck, feel like you're supporting mom and pop businesses, Atlanta really doesn't have it. All right, coming in at number 2, anti-urbanization. Okay, this is one that I don't hear talked a lot about, but especially if you're coming from a more progressive city that is really pro-urbanization, they're pro-public transportation, that is really not the case in Atlanta. First of all, we're sprawled out, we're not dense, so we're very car dependent, and we don't have a lot of great public transportation. We have MARTA, robust bus system, limited heavy rail transit, okay? This is not a New York City, this is not a Portland with great public transit. We have heavy rail. It's limited, 4 lines, northwest, east, south. So you definitely can utilize that heavy rail to cut down on your commute and save money. But we have had a battle in Atlanta for years and years about expanding MARTA, expanding heavy rail outside of the perimeter and the surrounding counties. They want to benefit from the money that Atlanta produces, but they don't want, Atlantans going out there to their suburban neighborhood for whatever reason. So MARTA has had a really hard time expanding. They've also not necessarily been great at managing their funds. And even beyond public transportation, with things like mixed-use, high-density buildings that want to get built by developers, these have had a lot of pushback from the communities that have to approve those buildings, okay? We refer to it here as NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Unfortunately, people down here, they will complain about traffic, they will complain about cost of living or affordability, but no one seems to want to vote for things that promote density and public transportation, which would really address these issues. So you may have a different stance on urbanization. I'm typically pretty pro-urbanization as long as it's done in an ethical, correct way, but the thing is, when you have a major city like Atlanta, there's a lot of people moving here, and there's going to continue to be a lot of people moving here, and you've got to put infrastructure in place that creates density and effectiveness and affordability for all the people that are going to be living in these spots. We cannot become more and more car dependent. You can't just add lanes on a highway. We need zoning laws that allow for more density. We need projects that connect the Beltline to housing. Right now they're talking about putting light rail on the Beltline, which was always the goal of Ryan Gravel, who's the person who originally envisioned the Beltline. And we're getting a big pushback on putting light rail on the Beltline. So Atlanta is a little bit less progressive when it comes to urbanization and creating density. And the truth is, if we keep growing at the rate that we're growing and don't make plans and accommodations for this, the traffic's only going to get crazier and the affordability isn't going to get better. So you should be aware before making the decision to move here that we're not very big on urbanization in Atlanta, Georgia. All right, coming in at number 1 on my list, let's see. We talked about allergies. They will get you. We talked about the food scene and all the corporate chains that there are. We talked about anti-urbanization. So, these are some things you might not hear about on other channels. I hope this is really helping you get a different feel for what Atlanta has to offer. But number 1, this was the biggest challenge for me. It still is the biggest challenge for me, but it's the gun culture. Okay, you've heard me talk about this before probably. Now look, this is personal. This is just my opinion. You might be a responsible gun owner, believe in that for everyone, and that's totally okay. Everyone brings their own personal life experience to these outlooks. I grew up in New York. I didn't know anyone who owned guns. There's obviously very strict gun laws. I never saw anyone carrying guns when I grew up in the Northeast. It's just very different down here, and it may not be a bad thing. This may be a reason why you do want to move here, and that's okay. I'm just sharing my experience, but there are very lax gun laws down here. You will see people open carrying. A lot of people do own guns, and unfortunately, there's a decent amount of gun violence down here. Now, it's not an insane amount like a St. Louis or New Orleans or Chicago. You do hear stories about shootings on the highway and road rage incidents, and you do hear about incidents with shootings, and you do see people with guns. That's not my favorite. I haven't had any personal experiences with violent crime or guns being used on me, thank God. But look, you should be aware if you're coming from a city with more progressive or strict gun laws and you're not used to that culture, I don't know where that would be, maybe in the West Coast or the Northeast, it's going to be a little bit different for you, okay? Now, again, caveat, there's tons of responsible gun owners down here. And, because there's a gun culture, there's shooting ranges, there's people that absolutely know how to own a gun responsibly, handle it, not handle it. Okay, so I'm not painting with a broad stroke, but I'm just telling you, if you didn't grow up in a culture where guns are very prevalent, it might be a little bit of a culture shock for you here. I know it is for me. My personal preference would be to live in an area where no one really owns a gun. But that's something that you might not hear other people tell you about Atlanta. And I'm just being real. You may never have an issue. You may love guns, be a gun nut, and you'll be in heaven down here. But you should just be aware that it's a little bit more prevalent. Does not mean you're going to have that kind of issue. Does not mean it's incredibly dangerous. In fact, Atlanta most certainly has been trending more safe over the last 20 years and continues to do so. But it's something that you should be aware of. So there you have it. Those are 4 things that you really need to be aware of and chew on before you make the final decision for you and your family on if Atlanta, Georgia is going to be the right spot. Now, if you heard those 4 things, you'd be like, that's nothing. I love guns. I don't suffer from allergies. I don't mind corporate chains, and you're fine driving everywhere. Okay, in that case, come on down. We'd love to have you. Look, again, I want to finish this off by saying I love Atlanta, okay? Obviously, my business is here. I make videos about Atlanta, so this video is not to disparage Atlanta, but these are important decisions that you and your family are making, and it's important to really pressure test them and know what some of the potential downsides are. So, like always, I really hope that provided you value. If you do need help finding a place in Atlanta, my contact information is in the description below. You can book a Zoom call with me, call me, email me, whatever you want to do. But I love when my viewers become clients. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment a topic that you want to hear me talk about in the future. And until my next video, I'll see you next time.